Okay, let's talk about something that sounds so simple, but is actually one of the hardest things for any of us to do. And that is doing absolutely nothing. Seriously, we're going to dive into the surprisingly difficult art of taking a real, meaningful break.
So, to get us started, here's a word you probably don't use every day: lull. It means to act in a relaxed, lazy way, to just be, Picture a cat napping in a perfect little sunbeam. That's lolling. It just perfectly captures this idea of totally unstructured, purposeless rest, not trying to be good at resting, but just genuinely hanging loosely. All right, so let me ask you this, straight up. When was the last time you truly did nothing? And I don't mean scrolling on your phone or binge watching a show or even meditating with an app to hit some goal. I mean, just nothing. It's a weirdly difficult question to answer, right?
And you know that struggle? That's exactly what we're digging into right now. Why on earth is it so hard to just stop? I mean, we live in a world that is constantly screaming at us to be on, to be achieving, to keep moving forward. But what happens when the engine just totally runs out of gas?
And it's a feeling we all know, right? We literally, mentally run out of breath. It's kind of like trying to hold a high note in a song forever. At some point, your lungs are just going to give out. Well, our brains are no different. That constant pressure to perform, to think, to create, it is absolutely exhausting. Our minds just need to exhale.
Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting. Even when we actually try to rest, we run into this internal resistance. And it turns out not all downtime is created equal. There's this fundamental conflict happening right inside our own heads.
See, on one hand, you've got what we can call involuntary rest. This is the easy stuff, right? The mindless phone scrolling, zoning out in front of the TV. It feels like a break, but it's really passive and honestly can be pretty unhealthy. But then, on the other hand, you've got purposeful rest. This is when you intentionally try to do nothing. And believe it or not, that's where the real struggle kicks in, because your brain just starts screaming about all the other things you should be doing. And this right here, this is the absolute core of the problem. That moment when you try to rest on purpose and your own mind just rebels against you, that's the conflict. It's this fight between your need for a break and that little voice in your head that's been trained to tell you to always be productive. It is a genuine internal battle. At the end of the day, it all comes down to this nagging, lingering feeling of guilt. You're trying to switch off, but there's that voice in your head going, hey, you should care about that work email. You should be thinking about that project. You're trying to lull, but your brain is telling you to get up and sprint. And that feeling just completely undermines the whole point of resting in the first place.
So if rest is this much of a struggle, what's the solution? How do we fix it? Well, we need a totally new way to think about it, a whole new mental model. And that brings us to this really powerful idea: thinking of rest as punctuation for your life.
Okay, this right here is the key. Just let that sink in for a second. Rest isn't the opposite of effort, it's the punctuation mark of it. Without it, the meaning just runs on and on until it's completely lost. Think about it. Imagine trying to read a book with 0 periods or commas. It would just be a chaotic stream of words, right? Totally incomprehensible. So a frantic, non-stop effort, that's just like a run-on sentence. It's basically noise. But the second you introduce a pause, a little comma to take a breath, or a full stop, a period, to end a thought, suddenly you have clarity, you have structure. Well, it's the exact same way with your work and your life. They need those pauses. Because without them, even your biggest successes just blur into one long, exhausting string of stuff.
All right, so how do we actually put this into practice? It's all about consciously, intentionally finding your full stop. It's about completely reframing rest, not as some kind of failure of productivity, but as an absolutely essential part of it.
So let's break down the key takeaways here. First off, you got to remember that rest isn't laziness, it's the thing that gives your hard work meaning. And because of that, you need to actively look for good stopping points. Because a deliberate pause is what lets you come back stronger. I mean, these breaks are what prevent burnout and stop all your achievements from just blurring into background noise. And finally, and this is a really important one, we have to acknowledge that true downtime can be a luxury. Not everyone has easy access to it. And that makes it even more critical to be intentional, to pick your battles, and really value the punctuation you can get. So let's end with this thought. If your life, or hey, even just your week or your day, is a sentence that you're writing, one word at a time, where are you going to put the commas? Where are you going to place the full stops? Because at the end of the day, without them, you're not really telling a story. You're just making noise.